in Cumberland, Rhode Island, and also the creator of the Browse Method. So I would like to start off today's session by thanking not only you all, but the San Jose State School of Information and Skill Type for allowing me to be here this afternoon. So just normal stuff for the Zoom room. I did ask to hold questions until the end. Feel free to chat with each other. But just so I stay on topic, we have plenty of time for questions. Hashtags library 2024, library 2035, and my personal hashtag take back the stacks. Are all great for this session. Okay. So, I know many librarians right now, it's tough times out there, but we will get through this, I promise. And at the end of this storm, the future of libraries is actually really very bright. We have served as information providers and connectors for centuries in our communities, and the way we've done so continues to evolve and expand exponentially. So if we just hang in there, the future looks really great. However, and we all know because there's a lot of people in this room today, there is one area where we're stuck, and it really is holding us back from becoming the powerhouse 21st century institutions that we are meant to be, the Dewey Decimal System. The world has changed completely since Dewey was released in 1876, and our patrons just are not searching for information the same way that they did 150 years ago. But our collections are always going to be an effective and great way to market our services and bring people into our buildings and online spaces. Humans love free stuff. By getting them into our buildings, by using said free stuff, we're giving our patrons more opportunities to understand just how much of it we have to offer. How many times have you heard a patron excitedly say, I didn't know you offered that collection or service or program? It also gives us the opportunity to build trust and relationships that are important when it comes to library funding and other matters that require community support. So what's the problem then? Well, Dewey doesn't speak to our patrons, and it's causing them to turn to resources like Google and Amazon, even if it means paying for the same information. How many times have you heard at your desk, where is this? What does this even mean? Where can I find other books like this? Why are there so many different places that this could be? Are you sure this is all you have? And my personal favorite, I'm just going to order it on Amazon. So they would much rather pay for it than take the extra time to talk to us and or figure out Dewey. And I promise you today that this is not a hate campaign against Dewey or LC. When Dewey was implemented in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell made the first phone call, and Thomas Edison received a patent for the original mimeograph machine, not even the mimeograph machine that many of us remember from our school days. Today's world, we have cell phones that can access millions of pieces of information in microseconds, and items can be digitally scanned and sent to millions of people in milliseconds. Most importantly, Dewey was never meant for patrons. It was designed for librarians working in closed stacks. The first open stacks would not come until 14 years post-Dewey at the Newark Public Library when they opened their stacks, and it was still several more years after that when Andrew Carnegie, opened his Pittsburgh library, only the second library in the country to have open stacks. So if we don't meet our patrons where they're at, we can't be surprised that they're not supporting our services. Back in 2009, there was an online survey conducted by Barbara Feister that more than 2/3 of patrons responded they feel intimidated by a classification system they do not understand very well, and that they want to go straight to the shelf without having to look anything up. They also had issues with the OPAC, call numbers, and shelving categories. So pretty much everything about how our collections are organized, they dislike immensely and have been saying so for quite some time. Add this information to the feedback we get on a daily basis in our buildings about using our collections, and it's obvious that we're not maximizing them to our benefit, or especially for the people that we buy them for. We all know that many people in our field believe that Dewey is inextricable from the perception of a public library, and you may even be one. Add to that, we have always done it this way, and we have a faction of library professionals who are fighting to keep a system that is holding us back from achieving our mission and goals in a huge way. I don't think these librarians are trying to sabotage our work. In fact, they're often the most passionate protectors of our profession. It could be the fear of change or the worry about how to take the next step that is making the majority of them dig in. And yes, Dewey has been a part of public libraries for as long as we can remember, but that does not mean it serves us or our future now. By realizing that we need to change and being able to share these points with your colleagues, you are setting the foundation for a 21st century library and future success for your community and our profession as a whole. So let's talk about how to counter the most popular arguments for keeping Dewey. I do assure you, when you have this conversation and you start the discussion, there's going to be a lot of questions and initially a lot of fear. So the first one is, everyone learns the Dewey Decimal System in school. They know and love it. And absolutely not, no. The number of people interested in this session, I see at least 158 right now, I believe, in the actual room. We know that if it was taught in school in a way that mattered, we would not see the level of reference anxiety, confusion, and general unwillingness to use our nonfiction collections as we do now. Let's face it, if somebody's actually willing to pay for something over getting it for free, something isn't working. I remember learning Dewey in school myself and never truly getting it. I used to love to be let loose in the stacks and look for information and browse, and I would be completely happy all day long. But the second I needed to find something specific for a report or other use, I just was not in a good place. I knew every library was set up the same way, but Dewey never clicked for me or flowed as far as the specifics of how to get from my question and to the answer that I was looking for. It's only been in the last 2 decades that I realized I'm not the only person who felt this way. In fact, far from it. That brings us to our next reason that people don't want to ditch Dewey, is that it's an institution in public libraries. Patrons will reject a library without Dewey. Again, no. We've already talked about what patrons are telling us. They've been clear. If we can provide a system that provides patrons more easily manageable stacks and that makes us more approachable and allows them to deep dive into our collections, they would be thrilled. In fact, by going that extra mile and increasing their comfort in the stacks, it's more likely to cement the idea that libraries are not only still relevant, something we fight every day, but essential and, God forbid, fun into the conversation surrounding our role in the community. It's also a brilliant way to compete with the idea that Google and Amazon are the most efficient ways to find information for the digital age patron who isn't always necessarily concerned that we can get them the right information. We've talked about this for a second, but we've always done it this way. Yeah, 100%. That's true. We have always done it this way. But that doesn't mean it needs to continue to always be done this way. In fact, the laws of library science tell us this is the exact reason we should not still be using the Dewey Decimal System. Ranganathan's 4th rule, save the time of the reader, and 5th rule, the library is a growing organism, speaks specifically to this issue. We are not saving the time of the reader or user in the case of other media and services if they cannot find the information they came for in the first place. And how can we possibly meet the needs of a digital age patron using a system that had no concept of what today's world would look like? Dewey was very literal, as he cataloged the world he lived in. It is not surprising there is no easy addition for things such as planes and trains, never mind the internet and cryptocurrency. So we have always done it this way, but the big question should be, how do we move forward? And finally, the most popular argument for ditching Dewey: we don't have the resources and time to make the change. I'll agree, the argument that having a universal system is best is not a wrong answer. This is one area where we cannot afford to reinvent the wheel every time. However, the time that goes and effort that goes into keeping some form of Dewey while trying to make it easier for today's patron is frustrating, time-consuming, and very often unsuccessful. Trying to organize a completely new system is an even bigger undertaking. We should definitely not be doing this on a library-by-library basis. We need to stop reinventing the wheel and rally. Luckily, the resource is here, and there is now a system that is available for all public libraries to use for free. The lab browse method makes it incredibly easy for any library to make the change. And again, it is completely free. It works with any ILS and within any consortium. The only change you are making to the record is a call number. Best yet, it's completely customizable and works in any language. I know it all sounds too good to be true, maybe even a bit overwhelming. So let's break it down a little bit and see how it can help you bring your patrons back to the stacks. Okay, this slide is missing some parts for some reason. Hopefully the rest will not be that, right? This project does not have to live in tech services, so you can assign many or as few or many people to it as the workload allows. At my library, our reference team of 5 changed the adult and teen nonfiction as part of the collections. As part of our daily tasks, we were open the entire time of the transition and never closed the stacks. For reference, we changed about 26,000 items in total. The new call number we begin. I am going to stop the share for a moment so I can pull up a different file, but we're going to keep talking because I can still get you what we need. So sorry. The new call number is a 4-digit finder number. No more decimals, no more having books on the same topic in several sections of the collection, as well as no more, even sometimes on the same shelf, we'll find the same book in 2 different places. That's not going to happen anymore. The outline was created using the bookstore model categories as a starting point. So all you have to do, so what we have is the best of Dewey, which is that finding number to make it completely, we need that finding number to make it findable at any point. And then the bookstore model for the layout, it's patron friendly, it's widely accepted by the masses. So that's another wonderful opportunity. The rest of your mock record stays exactly the same. Because you're only changing numbers, it can be integrated into any OPEC. And within any consortium. Again, it can be used in any language. So spine labels will use, in our case, they have plain English on them. Patrons feel empowered to browse your collection and confident that they will find what they need without having to search out a staff member, which they may not want to do. And for those of you who are thinking, oh, well, you just did this because you don't want to talk to the patrons and you're trying to make it so that it's all self-service, and that is absolutely not the case. Think about it. For the purposes of making the stacks more user-friendly, when they come to us, they're going to be more empowered and they're going to not be so frustrated or filled with anxiety because they can't figure out how to use the collection. The bonus of that is that they're not defensive or feeling less than, but understanding that while they cannot find exactly what they're looking for, we are super happy to help them. And that's just going to make, again, a whole different experience when they do come to the desk. And I'm sure our front desk people will all be very happy to admit that that is exactly what we're looking for, is a happier patron at the end of the day. The collection has several different finding aids. We have some, the PowerPoint slides will be including the PowerPoint slides will include the different signage that we have for this, and just for reference, when you do go in, and we are using Koha as our ILS and Aspen Discovery for our OPEC. We choose to use tinted labels as an additional finding aid. It doesn't take anything away from our colorblind patrons. However, it does make it, again, another nice finding aid for our patrons who can see them. You can obviously use clear labels, not a problem. Browse method cuts down on shelving time and increases search exponentially. It is a lot easier when you're doing collection maintenance because you can see exactly what you have, and it's all in one place, and what needs to go, what needs to be updated. It's wonderful. And it makes it super obvious when something's in the wrong place. The best part of it is that when we finished Unexpected Bonus, when we finished relabeling the collection, it looked brand new. Like bookstores, you can customize what works best for your community. If you want to feature a section, no problem. There is room for growth within, and within every section, within every category, and as a whole. So as new topics and new areas show up that we'd like to add into the collection, they can be very easily added in. And best of all, it's a low cost project. The only upfront cost are spine labels and spine label overlays. Staff time, of course, is a precious resource, but I promise you, your return on investment will far exceed what you put into it. Of course, there is more to Dewey than just changing some labels. So if you want to ditch it, I can tell you from experience that if you prepare your staff, administration, board members, and patrons, then ditching Dewey can be a wonderful experience for all involved. Each group will require a different set of information, but key is communication through every step of the process. So we have to talk to each group differently, but as long as you keep that communication going, it makes the process much easier. It's especially important to talk to our patrons while you are making the change and include them every step of the way. They are going to be the easiest sell on the list. They want and need the library to be more user-friendly. They want to come in and not feel ignorant because they can't work the Dewey Decimal System. The more they understand what it is and why you're doing this, the far more excited and supportive they'll be. We use passive programs in the reference department, as well as social media and a newspaper article to let our patrons not only know about the change, but also to let them participate in the process. They were patient with us because they knew what we were doing and why. And as they saw it come to fruition, they were more excited than ever to see the rest of our collection finished and ready to go. Their happiness speaks for itself. We no longer hear frustrated patrons saying they don't understand how the stacks work and that they will just pay for information rather than use the free resource literally right in front of them. In fact, one of the biggest tells of the success of our Ditching Dewey is that patrons are not complaining and are leaving with a smile on their face and items in their hands. I was asked here today to encourage you to help us make 21st century librarianship a reality in our libraries. That means being willing to really listen to our patrons and hear that they need us to meet them where they're at. We no longer have the luxury of being the only game in town, and if we insist on sticking with Dewey because it is the way we have always done it, then we can't be surprised when our patrons turn their backs and leave us in the past. That would be a shame because we're just getting warmed up and for a new era of librarianship, and there are great things to come if we can just get out of our own way. More information about the browse method is available at the Cumberland Public Library website, cumberlandlibrary.org, and browsemethod.com will be up within the next month. New resources based on this presentation, including a full PowerPoint slide deck and requests from other libraries, will be uploading soon. I am available and happy to do phone consultations and provide any resources or any tips of things that we've learned and other people have told me as they go through the process. Feel free to email me, call me with any questions. I look forward to more libraries joining us and taking back the stacks and realizing the potential of 21st century librarianship. Thank you all for your time. Again, now that we're talking, I'm going to try and find the rest of those slides in one of my many backup documents, but I am so happy to answer questions and see what you're all thinking, and anything that you have to ask.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. So there is a question. What was the increase to your nonfiction circ after you did the project?
Okay, so everybody knows that what happened after we finished our project, COVID happened, and everybody knows what happened to our in-house stats after COVID. Everybody's kind of really sank a lot. So while we were seeing physical increases, probably about 10%, we did see the same slide that everybody else saw, but we are starting to rebound now and seeing an increase again. But again, we didn't drop as much as we heard some other library dropping, other libraries dropping, and national statistics, which I saw as high as 40 to 50%. We were nowhere near that.
Wow, so 40 to 50% increase. Is
No, no,
that what
no.
you're
That's
saying?
how after COVID, a lot of libraries, I was reading an article somewhere that was saying some libraries saw, because we were closed, a lot of
Oh, right,
libraries
right,
were
right.
seeing 40 to 50% decreases in SERPs. Ours were
Decreases.
never
Okay.
anywhere near that.
Oh, that's great. And I think there was a question about the link to the replacement system, which is the Browse Cumberland, the
The browse method.
cumberlandlibrary.org.
Cumberlandlibrary.org /browse hyphen method. But if you
Okay.
would get to cumberlandlibrary.org, you can see the whole outline, and it will, and again, I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to really just walk as many steps through the process, whether it's asking, some people want to know, how did you get your buy-in? Other people want to know, like, what was the hardest part? What would you do differently? I'm happy to talk to everybody about that.
Great. Thank you. There's another question. Devil's advocate here, maybe,
Mhm.
even if you're using genres, you're still having to decide if a book on the history of rice goes with history books or cooking books. If
Right.
you use DDC but have your shelves well labeled with genre names in plain English, what is really the difference?
Okay, so this is kind of the point where the PowerPoint would have been a lovely addition, and I will be adding that to the Cumberland website as soon as we finish here, on the browse method page. Yes, but a lot of times you can have the same book in two different places on the same shelf. Dewey's not foolproof. I'm not saying that the browse method is. However, I think, and we all know the age-old argument, again, devil's advocate, of do we stay true to Dewey and make sure the cataloger is the person that is in charge of that, or do we look at it from a patron point of view and put it where it makes the most sense? So the browse methods mentality is, where's the patron most likely to look for this book? So if it's more about the geography and the growing of rice and how it's cultivated, that might very well be in agriculture. But then again, it might be in cooking if it's more about the history of rice, and how it builds community, or the history of rice and it's got 300 recipes in it. It really depends on the book and who is the patron that is looking for this book. That's where we're going to put it.
Okay. And there's a comment, Howie said, I think it's going from an unintuitive method to an intuitive one.
Mm.
The difference, I think, is centering on the patrons.
Yes, yes,
So
thank you. Mhm.
another question, it seems like you are substituting one system for another. What is the return on investment for all of the time spent?
Okay, so it's so much quicker when you're pulling books, when you're shelving books, it's so much quicker. The tags make it much more obvious when a book is in the wrong place. It is easier and quicker to assign a browse method number than it is to assign a Dewey number, especially depending on your library. I know some libraries keep it to two. I've seen libraries go as far as 6 digits past the decimal point. Um, which it can be stressful. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I was a community relations manager for Barnes and Noble for well over a decade, before I came to librarianship, and I've spent my career looking at how people shop for books and general information, and their mindset when they're going into it and looking for it. And it just kind of uniquely positioned me to be able to, and I've worked my way up from page through, I've worked every desk in a library, and just having that unique vision, and of seeing how people are looking for information. It is intuitive. I think that is the most important thing when we talk about today. And it's meeting patrons where they're at, because if it's not intuitive, they don't have time for you. They have Google, they have Amazon. And really, I think one of the biggest things, and I really don't talk about this much, but one of the biggest things that comes from changing over to the browse method is that you are saying to your patrons, we hear you, we understand that you don't look for information the way people have looked for information like 200, 150 years ago. So this is just one more way that we're looking to meet your needs, maybe even before you know it. I personally think we're a little behind the curve on this one, but again, switching one system for another. However, it is a system that can be used universally. And I really do believe that in this field, we reinvent the wheel far too often. We all have these amazing talents and bring so much to the table. And if we had better outlets for sharing our work and putting it out there, we could spend time doing a lot more of the work that we're uniquely talented for, and making sure that our patron customize. I always tell my staff by Bauer Steel, send thank you letters, make sure you let the library know that you got an idea from, that you're using it and that you love it, but make sure you customize it for our community. So the browse method is the best of both worlds, because you have somebody saying, okay, here's the outline, but then you also are able to say, well, my community, we pulled out graphic novels, and that is a whole section upon itself that includes not only our graphic novels, but also our books about how to draw a graphic novel biographies, including some manga stuff with that as well, histories, anything to do with graphic novels.
Okay.
Oh,
Couple more questions. We
sorry.
have like 4 more minutes here.
Okay.
How large is your collection and how long did it take you to convert?
About 26,000. Now, I always say that's kind of an unfair question, because I was creating the browse method as we went. So it took us about 2 years, but again, I was creating as we went. And it was not a small collection. We did about 26,000 titles between and again, I don't know if this was clear or not. This is only meant for nonfiction. So nonfiction, YA nonfiction, adult, oversized books, reference books, nonfiction audio books, DVDs, and large print.
Okay, great. Thank you. And who does your cataloging and processing, a vendor or in-house?
We do ours in-house. So the initial thing, so when I brought this up, tech services immediately said, nope, we are not touching every book that's in the building. And I said, you are a team of two. I have no expectation that is what we are going to do. And she was great. She's like, you do you, and you guys get that set up. And when you guys are set up, then we can just take it over in tech. As we were changing things over, we had a changeover in staff. So to let the new staff settle in, we just kept assigning numbers. But that'll be changing, and then we won't be touching them at all in the next few months.
Okay. And then another question, how does the browse method stay open to expansion? Dewey feels closed to new topics or like it gets shoehorned in? Yep.
So when you go to the website, you will see that I have the flow chart and the number breakdown. And so we use 0 to 999, 1000 to 1999, so on. So there's room within each of those categories, but I also break it down within each specific subject area, and there's room to grow. So you might have 100 spots in between one subject and another, or we use something called tertiary. So if you see our books, if you look at our books on the shelf, some of them have asterisks on them. And what that means is that it's part, so for an area such as botany, you'll have botany books, but if there's an area, and it's not just for anything, because I think we do need to heed that, like, if there's less than 5 to 10 books, maybe it doesn't need a tertiary. But if the area expands and grows, so speaking of the pandemic, our pandemic section, the tertiaries are each individual pandemic, so they're all together, but it's not like sometimes in Dewey you will see like all of the pandemics, and it'll be like, part one, part like bird flu,
Sure.
and then so all of the bird flu is together, all of COVID is together,
All
all of the
right.
first pandemic is together, so
Okay,
it
cool.
keeps you together.
Thank you. One last
Thank you so
question,
much. Oh,
and
okay.
then we need to end here. What about the kids'
Okay.
nonfiction collection? Just real quick.
I am simplifying the browse method. I don't think they need as many categories, so that'll be coming out in the next 6 months. You could use the browse method and again just not use categories you don't need, but I think we can definitely simplify it much more. And honestly, what you would just be doing is probably using main subject areas, but again, completely customizable.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you
Thank
all for
you. You've
your
been
present
great.
for
Thank
your
you.
participation and
Sorry
in the
about the
chat.
technical.
That's okay. That happens, but thank you so much, everyone. And
Okay.
I put in chat the link to the other sessions that are coming up next. So please do join one of those. I'm going to stop the recording now.